This cocktail of different molecules all mixed together, how in the world do you pick out the most profitable parts and leave the rest? For gas processors, this isn't just a simple question. It's a huge multi-billion-dollar challenge they tackle every single day.
And the prize we're all after? Well, it's these things called natural gas liquids, or NGLs for short. We're talking about things like ethane, propane, and butane. See, they're gases when they're mixed in with the natural gas stream, but if you get the conditions just right, you can turn them into liquids. That makes them way easier to transport and, frankly, incredibly valuable. Ethane, for instance, is the main ingredient for most of the plastics in the world.
Okay, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the two main ways to separate these liquids. Then we'll look at the classic absorption method before we dive into the super cold world of cryogenics and the real game changer, the turbo expander. And finally, we'll see why being efficient is everything.
You know, at the end of the day, gas processors really face a fundamental choice. They've got to decide which path they're going to take to get these valuable NGLs out of the gas stream.
And believe me, this isn't some minor decision. The two methods we're about to talk about are the absolute heavyweights in the industry. Together, they're responsible for a whopping 90% of all natural gas liquid production. They basically are the industry.
So here they are, the two big paths. On one side, you've got the absorption method. The easiest way to think about this is like using a kind of chemical sponge to just soak up the NGLs. And on the other side, you have the cryogenic process, which is all about one thing, getting things really, really cold to force those NGLs to turn from a gas into a liquid.
So let's start with that chemical sponge. The absorption method is one of the original ways to do this, and honestly, the idea behind it is pretty brilliant in its simplicity.
It's really just a three-step dance. First, you take the raw, wet gas and mix it with a cold, absorbing oil. They call it lean oil. This oil acts like a magnet for the heavier NGLs, and once it soaks them up, it becomes rich oil. Then, you just heat that rich oil in a still, the NGLs boil right off, you collect them, and the lean oil is ready to go for another round.
So how well does this basic method actually work? Well, for the bigger, heavier molecules, it's actually pretty good. You can get about 75% of the butanes and up to 90% of the really heavy stuff, like pentanes. But notice what's not really on that list? The lighter and often more valuable liquids.
So, naturally, engineers wanted better results. And they came up with a pretty clever upgrade. What if you just made that lean oil colder before you mixed it with the gas? Turns out, by using refrigeration to pre-chill it, you can seriously boost its absorbing power.
And would you look at those results? With that chilled oil, propane recovery shoots up to over 90%. And you even start grabbing a decent amount of ethane, about 40%. But if ethane is the main thing you're after, 40% just isn't going to cut it. For that, you need a whole new game plan. And that, my friends, brings us to cryogenics. When the money makes sense to go after those super light hydrocarbons like ethane, you have to get extremely cold. That's where cryogenic processes are absolutely essential.
The core idea here is something called the Joule-Thomson effect. Now, it sounds complicated, but I promise you've experienced this. If you've ever used a can of compressed air to clean your keyboard and felt the can get icy cold, that's it. When you let a compressed gas expand really fast, its temperature drops like a rock.
So here's what that looks like in a real plant. The wet gas comes in under pressure, you force it through that little JT valve, and bam, it expands. That sudden expansion causes an instant massive temperature drop, and the NGLs just condense. They turn into liquid and fall to the bottom of the tank to be collected. It's simple, for sure, but there's an even better way. And that brings us to the star of the show, the turbo expander. This thing is the absolute state-of-the-art in cryogenic NGL recovery. It takes that basic idea of expansion and just cranks it up to a whole new level of efficiency.
Now, I know there's a lot going on here, but the key innovation is just brilliant. Instead of letting gas just passively expand through a valve, the turbo expander shoots it through a turbine. Think of it like a tiny, super powerful windmill. As the gas rushes through, it spins the turbine blades, and in doing so, it performs work. This gives you a much more controlled, efficient, and way more dramatic drop in temperature.
And when I say dramatic, I really mean it. This process can plunge the temperature of the gas stream all the way down to a frigid minus 49 degrees Celsius. I mean, that is just unbelievably cold. At a temperature like that, those valuable NGLs have absolutely no choice but to give up, drop out of the gas, and turn into a liquid that we can collect.
And what's the payoff for getting this cold, this fast? An incredible 90 to 95% recovery of all the ethane in the gas stream.
I mean, for a company whose entire profit might depend on grabbing that one component, that is a massive, massive win.
But here's the most elegant part, the real stroke of genius in the design. The energy that's captured by that spinning turbine, it's not wasted, not at all. It's used to do more work. A shaft connects that turbine directly to a compressor, which then takes the leftover methane gas and repressurizes it to go into the pipeline. It's this beautiful, self-powering loop that just slashes the need for outside energy.
So let's bring it all home and talk about why this whole evolution, this push for better technology and more efficiency is just so important.
So, to sum it all up, the choice of what tech to use really comes down to the money. The old-school absorption method? It's great if you're just trying to get the heavy liquids. But if your main goal is getting as much ethane as possible, you have to go cryogenic. And in that world, the turbo expander is the undisputed champion. It gets you the most product while brilliantly recycling energy to save you a ton of cash.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? The turbo expander is a perfect example of how one really clever engineering idea can totally revolutionize an industry's efficiency. It really makes you wonder, with energy being such a huge deal right now, what other hidden everyday industrial processes are out there just waiting for a similar breakthrough to help optimize our world?